Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Today's episode is a game review and I will be covering one of yesterday's biggest games, the Seattle Seahawks visiting the Green Bay Packers in a battle which in theory should be between two of the NFC powerhouses. Now, this was a strange game, in particular the first half. The Packers ended up coming away with the win. And the big takeaway for me from this game is how little has changed for the Seahawks from last season. Now, I've just done talking about the Cowboys-Giants game, and a lot of what I say about the Seahawks offense is going to be pretty much echoing the same sentiment that I did in the previous. So we'll start on the other side of the ball, the matchup between the Packers offense and the Seahawks defense. Let's talk some positives. The two of the elite groups in the league, and there was a lot of fun to watch. The first half, the Seahawks were absolutely stellar. Brian Bulaga was missing in this game, and boy did that show the lack of talent compared to previous years. Jari Evans on his last legs at this point. A few years ago you had Sitton and TJ Lang in there. It doesn't look quite as good right now, and as a result the Seahawks were able to generate a lot of pressure throughout this game. Aaron Rodgers was constantly on the run and he took a lot of hits, and a lot of that came from Cliff Averill. Michael Bennett had a decent game as well. There was push up the middle, managed to get a few big plays against the run. That run game still doesn't look particularly impressive. I'm still impressed with Ty Montgomery every time I watch him. He's clearly a far better runner than anyone I think would have expected when he was given that role. He ran tough against what, especially with the addition of Sheldon Richardson, looks like a pretty tough front now. Bennett was very active in this game. He was causing disruption basically wherever he lined up. Averill managed to get around his tackle a couple of times, create some pressure, and the Seahawks secondary did a good job in limiting plays. I think the second half of the game is where things really changed around. The first half, the pressure in the backfield was just so consistent. No ability to run the ball. Rodgers looked really out of his element at times. Really was a lot of heat on him, and he was struggling just to even look downfield at times. The biggest moment in the game could well be the interception return that was called back. I can't remember who he threw it to, but basically just threw it straight at a defensive lineman who rumpled back for a touchdown. And to be honest, I think this is a pretty controversial call. Jeremy Lane ended up being sent from the game, and it called back the touchdown, and considering the Seahawks' offensive struggles, that was huge. At the point the game was 0-0 as well. It was just a defensive slugfest, and they lost. They're not one of their starting corners, and that's obviously never a good thing, but in particular when you're playing a team like the Packers and the amount of receiving weapons that they have. So from what I saw there was definitely an illegal block in the back. So the return was always going to be called back, so that's fair. I'm not sure. Apparently there was a punch thrown. I didn't see any replay that showed that. I've tried looking at it again. I can't see Lane throwing any punch. The only thing I can think, and I guess this is very much down to your own opinion, is he's got the Packers player on the floor and he's got his forearm up against his throat, and how aggressive an action that's considered, I think, comes down to your personal opinion. To me, anything like that kind of around the throat area, I think you can possibly justify. I don't know what the exact ruling in the NFL rulebook is, and as to whether it should have been. I think the official line was that there was a punch thrown, but again, could not see that. So I think you can perhaps justify disqualifying him from the game, but yeah, it was a real tough break for the Seahawks, especially the block in the back, 'cause it was so unnecessary, and it ended up, I think, it was a real turning point, because at that point both teams were struggling to get absolutely anything going. I mean, in the first half there was Randall Cobb managed to make a few catches. He looked really sharp, picking up things, mainly short stuff, slants and drags, and then just picking up yards after the catch. As a result, his yards per catch weren't particularly impressive, but he had a number of catches over the course of the game. I think he ended with about 80 odd yards or so, but it was just the best he's looked in a while. He looked quick, he looked sharp. Rodgers targeted him pretty often in this game, so I think he's got some confidence that he's back to full health. It certainly looked that way to me. He was looking pretty elusive there. Seahawks did a great job of limiting the yards after the catch in this game, though, whilst the Packers were able to get some, never able to break anything. Jordy Nelson had a Jordy Nelson game, made some good grabs, some tough ones. Rodgers, as he often does, looking for Nelson on the scramble drills, and managed to come up with a nice touchdown. It's really, at the time, and the way the Seahawks offense was going, felt like it was basically game over. And he looked like Jordy Nelson. Frankly, thought Sherman had a good game. Got beat underneath a couple of times, but he didn't give anything up. As a whole, the Seahawks secondary the whole defense played a really good game. They didn't do anything fancy. They did what they normally do. They rushed with their 4. Our linebackers were doing a nice job throughout the day. As I say, the Packers couldn't really get, other than that final drive, and by that point, and I think this is true of a lot of the second half, I think the Seahawks defense just started to wear down, get gassed. They were on the field a lot this game. I mean, that first half there were so many punts. It was incredible, but the Packers managed to just get something going in the second half, and I think it started to tell at the end. Saw Ty Montgomery on that game-closing drive, managing to find some room. A couple of plays from Martellus Bennett, both Bennett brothers in this game. He managed to seal the deal after a stupid penalty, but there were some potentially cheap shots thrown in this game. It did feel pretty bad tempered at times. These teams clearly do not get along on the field. But I think that was the difference. If you're Pete Carroll and if you're a Seahawks fan, the Seahawks defense, that they are what they are. They're an elite unit. Sheldon Richardson didn't make too much of an impact in this game, but I do think they looked more stout against the run than they would have otherwise were he not there. Bobby Wagner had a nice game. The safeties played very well. Thomas had a couple of opportunities to come up with picks, made a great play on an underthrown ball from Aaron Rodgers. I can't remember who was it. Adams? It was Adams or Cobb were over the top. Corner was beat, and Thomas managed to make a heck of a play coming underneath it. It was a bad throw, but Thomas nearly managed to come away with a pick there. He looked really good in his first game action in a while. Well, meaningful game action in a while. So, and the pressure was very good. They looked dangerous. They looked sharp. The Seahawks defense, they looked fine. And I think if they're going to be hard to run on, then they're just going to be real contenders for being the best defense in the league this year. Packers offense, I think you've got to be concerned about Brian Bulaga. This offensive line does not look good. The run game, again, didn't look great. I'm not sure how good the Seahawks are against the run yet at this point, but we saw these problems last year. It didn't look much better to me. Just struggling to open up any kind of lanes for Montgomery. The line looks very lightweight in run blocking, and far too often, particularly up the middle, those A-gaps are just getting clogged, and it's nothing doing. So that's got to be a concern. The right tackle position was a problem all day, and the Seahawks really managed to capitalise on it. The receivers, as a result, I think they did a good job with what they had, especially in the second half. Rodgers was just getting enough time to find his guys. Devontae Adams came alive in the second half, had some catches. Nelson managed to make a few big conversions. Tends to turn up when the Packers need him most. As I say, Randall Cobb contributed with a few grabs throughout the day. Bennett looked a nice addition. I think he really helped his ability to at least maybe not controlling this game, but at least to offer a threat over the middle of the field. It feels like it will certainly more attention paid to him than there would have been to tight ends in previous years. He had some nice blocks in this game as well, so I think he's a very welcome addition. I just think they need to sort out this blocking. Rodgers struggled early on, but I think a lot of that can be down to the amount of pressure and hits he was taking. Once he settled down in the second half, he looked really sharp and made a lot of nice plays on the run. His decision making was a couple of iffy throws in the first half, but second half he was almost spotless. So yeah, good job from him. It looks like the same guy. His ability to throw on the run is still an absolute marvel to me. Jordan Nelson made a great catch at one point. It was Rodgers scrambling to his right, throwing it toward the sideline. It was a bit behind Nelson. He just makes the adjustment, catches it on the sideline and goes out of bounds. And those are the kinds of plays this offense can make that not a lot of other ones can, because of those two guys and that connection. So yeah, this felt like a good matchup. It played like a very good matchup, and the Seahawks certainly did enough on their end. They'll probably feel hard done by for that interception, but at the end of the day, the game really was won on the other side of the ball, where Russell Wilson and the Seahawks offense were frankly abysmal, and that's not on Wilson at all. Last year, there were a number of games where he spent the entire day under siege. There's no running lanes. As much as I can be critical of the Packers' offensive line, especially in the first half where I thought they really struggled, the Seahawks line was just an absolute mess for the entire game. Nick Perry, early in the game, was just getting pressure on just about every snap. There was one point, the left tackle just got put straight on his ass right off the snap. That was just embarrassing to watch. And frankly, I don't think the pass rush that the Packers have is that great. Like, Perry played well in this game. Mike Daniels had a heck of a day. They just could not block him at all. He was in the backfield early and often, just about every snap. I'm sure Russell Wilson knows Mike Daniels' face a heck of a lot better today than he did last week. So yeah, Daniels, brilliant performance. We know he's a really good player, but these linemen had no answer for him. Even Clay Matthews looking a lot younger. The only reason there weren't that many sacks, I think there was 3 in the game, is because of Russell Wilson's mobility. They really are so fortunate there in Seattle right now to have possibly the most mobile quarterback in the league. Otherwise, he'd be... Yeah, I think he'd be in a hospital right now. It really was that bad. As a result, no ability to run the ball whatsoever, no matter who they went with. They tried to sprinkle in Eddie Lacy. Every time Lacy got the ball, he just got hit immediately in the backfield. There was one nice run by the rookie, is it Carson? He had one nice burst out to the right hand side, but he didn't see too many carries. I'm not sure it really would have mattered. And it just, once again, just when you can't pass block, you can't run block, offense is difficult. Doug Baldwin made a few nice grabs over the course of the game, as did Paul Richardson, as they managed to make a few completions. I think in the first half there was just so many the Seahawks just seemed to go 3 and out just about every time they had the ball, up until kicking the field goal at the end of the half. Jimmy Graham, they tried to get him the ball on a couple of screens. They got absolutely nothing. He had an incredibly quiet day. Absolutely woeful. It's hard to even describe whether there was a game plan in place, because whatever it was, the offensive line just took it away with their it's ineptitude. It sounds harsh, but Frank, that's the only way to describe it. The blocking was utterly woeful. I mean, it's one of the worst blocking performances I've ever seen. And I mean, I've not watched the Houston-Jacksonville game yet, so that's probably going to be a competitor for. Well, I mean, then you've got the Giants' performance. The Giants one wasn't as bad as this. Eli at least had opportunities to throw. yeah, it was a mess. I mean, Wilson ended up being their most successful rusher. There were so many times where it looked like it was his only option was to just take the snap and just try and find a rushing lane and go for it. The kind of like in the last game, I was saying the Cowboys secondary is hard to judge them on that performance because the quarterback just couldn't set up and throw. I feel that way about this game. Doug Baldwin had a few catches. I think he had like 60 yards, similar sort of numbers. I think for Richardson, he probably finished with a bit less. But you've got a quarterback that just isn't being provided with an opportunity to throw. It's impossible to really read it. Got to give Capers credit. He saw the issues they had at tackle, and frankly, Mike Daniels was just unblockable. So they were able to sit plenty of guys in coverage. As a result, Wilson couldn't diagnose and make plays quick enough because you got a lot of guys in coverage, and the pressure's getting there as though like they're bringing 5 or 6 every play. It was absolutely ridiculous. It's really tough to do reviews on these kind of games. My Chiefs Patriots one, I could go through some X's and O's. There were some clear game plans. There were some clear moves made. The second half, up 3-0, nothing really changed. The pass rush died down a little, and Wilson was able to get some completions. But again, he just wasn't able to set up deep. Of course, he didn't look in rhythm at all because you can't establish a rhythm when you're under that much pressure. And it just was... it was bad. It was really bad. I don't think you can make any kind of assessment of the Packers' defence from this performance other than, Nick Perry looked good. Looks like he might not just be a one-year wonder. He was playing for a contract. Mike Daniels is clearly still very good. The inside backers played pretty well. I thought that, again, they're going to be tested more than they were in this one, I'm sure. And the corners, did a good job keeping everything in front of them, which is all they had to do in a situation like this. And it's got to be really concerning if you're a Seahawks fan, because this defense is, it's that good. They're clearly championship caliber. Wilson's a quarterback capable of getting you there. There's some weapons there, but this O-line at this point has to be the concern. It looks like it's threatening to sabotage this entire season once again. Based on what you saw today, they're not going to be able to hold up against any competent defensive front. They've got to play the Rams twice. Aaron Donald's going to have a field day if you look at what Mike Daniels did today. So it's worrying stuff. For the Packers, hard to read too much into this game. Defensively, I'm sure they'll be pleased with the performance like the Cowboys. That they'll take confidence from it, even though I don't know if the secondary, which is the question mark that you've really got there, didn't get tested because of the pass rush. So they'll feel good about things. They'll certainly be tested more next week when they play against Atlanta. So definitely looking forward to that one from an evaluation perspective. Got to be concerned a little about the offensive line. They need Bulaga back clearly. They need to try and shore up the interior blocking a little bit. However, they will certainly face easier matchups. But the receivers looked good. Once Rodgers did get going, he looked sharp. I think, as say Montgomery he didn't have the lanes. I think he ran the ball pretty well with what he had. So I think a good day all round for the Packers. Getting them, a big win over a team that certainly could be competing with them for a high seeding. But questions about the Seahawks. Was expecting the line to be bad, not to be that bad. So there you have it. Seahawks defense, Packers offense, they are what we thought. Much improvement needs to be made from that O-line. Packers defense, need to see a couple more games before we can come to any conclusions on them. And there you have it. So let us know, what do you think of this review? Do you have any thoughts yourself? Anything you want to get off your chest, let us know, whether it's the comment section below, the Cover Zero Facebook page. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to talk football. Thank you so much for watching. It's always a pleasure. There's plenty of other stuff. As I say, I already reviewed the Sunday night game, the Giants at the Cowboys. I'm going to be getting the Raiders and Titans up shortly. Make try and get a couple other games up before I do the Monday games tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have, like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon. All that stuff will be greatly appreciated. It's been a pleasure as always. Have a great day and go Bucks.